Welcome to today's Fireside. This is session number 5 with me, Jamie Jones, Career Development Advisor in Student Employability. Today's topic is quite an interesting one and quite an important one as well for everybody's careers across the world, and that is personal and professional development. Okay, so what I want you to do is in the chat box, if you could just write down what you're looking to get out of the session, whether that's an understanding or if it's something more specific than that, and if it's something that I'm able to answer in the session, then I can do that. As always, I only have a couple of slides to share with you, which is this title one, and then this one as well, which is just some housekeeping. So in terms of the housekeeping, everybody has been muted for the time being, and what I'm looking at doing is having as much engagement within the chat function as possible. I want this to be as interactive as possible. As always, any inappropriate behaviour will lead to termination of the session, but I want you to see this as being a safe space. So all questions are welcome, and as I said, if it's something I'm able to answer, then I will do. It might be that we have to refer you on to an additional appointment, or it might be that you that there are some other resources that we can signpost you to. And video recording will be distributed to you all in the coming days. Or I'm not sure where we are in terms of our pipeline, but certainly as soon as that has been put onto YouTube, that will be shared with you. Okay. So what I'll do, as always, I will turn off my screen share and turn on my camera. Okay, guys. Cool, so I've already got a couple of questions coming through now. So I'm just going to get up my discussion points on the left here. So the first thing first, more than anything, is I suppose we've got a few questions coming in already, but who here has already done some form of professional development, and what kind have you done? Okay, now if you don't know how to answer that question because we haven't defined what that is, that's perfectly fine. Obviously, that's the whole purpose of this session. Some of you may have already done some PD, which is short for professional development, and just need a bit of reassurance or nudging in the right direction that what you're doing is the correct kind of thing. Okay, so in terms of what professional development is, to put it completely honestly, it can take up many different forms. So it could be courses. It could potentially be even some your own reading. It could be exhibitions. It could be conferences. Could be something like that. Basically, what the development space is about upskilling and about developing. Okay. Now, what this means in practice is it really comes down to, as I've said, upskilling. So if you take into consideration, for example, that you are at a current level, the professional development stuff might actually be that you will do an additional type of learning, which could actually help you improve on paper. Now, the advantages of doing that is that it will differentiate you from a wide audience of people, and it's something else to put on your resume. Okay? I've mentioned different types. So I've mentioned conferences, I've mentioned exhibitions, I've mentioned courses, only briefly, and we're going to go into that. So throughout, I'll give you some examples of PD that I've done before. So there's been a number of professional development stuff that I've done throughout my career. So when I was working many years ago in a sales capacity, some of the professional development that I was doing was a mandatory problem-solving course. Okay, so that was because I was making many cold calls per day. My employer said, we're putting every single person here on how to overcome challenges or how to deal with problem solving or how to do negotiation, which was a key part of the role and an area where a lot of untrained individuals were struggling with. So the employer suggested that they didn't suggest, they signed us up to a mandatory course and we brought in an external provider. with my role at my last university in London, when I was made to promoted to team leader, one of the main professional development courses that I asked to go on, because it wasn't mandatory, was how to deal with difficult people. There was a team leadership, and there was stress management for managers as well. So there's a few different examples of the professional development I've done. But all of those things have been absolutely pivotal in me getting to where I am today. Alongside that, I've done other professional development stuff that's got nothing to do with the careers I'm doing. For example, I have done a networking course, and this is the one time I don't mean networking as in communicating and speaking with one another. I mean networking in the technology sense. So I did an accreditation by Cisco, the Certified Network Associate course. Well, I'm still technically doing that, purely as a hobby. Alongside that, I've done some marketing courses in professional development, such as communication strategies and things of that nature. So there's a whole range of different courses I've done. Now, if you look at professional development or personal development, I mean, the way to differentiate them is I would personally say that professional was using more for your career, whereas personal development could be something completely different. It could be like how to make difficult decisions. It could be something like creating positive habits or something like that. Okay, so when it comes to any form of development, there's always going to be a lot of value to it. And a lot of the personal or professional development stuff that you learn can actually be transferred to that other region. So if it's a personal thing, it could still be transferred to the professional capacity and vice versa. So there's some examples of the things that I've done, and I hope that kind of defines what it should be, really. Now, the thing with professional development is it can both be mandatory or it can just be something that you want to do yourself. Obviously, if it's mandatory, it means that it's something that's required. Now, often if you start a role or you are given a promotion or if you are doing some form of, let's say, an appraisal or something like that, your employer may say to you, we want you to take on additional responsibilities, and one of these things might be to do a course in XYZ. So one of the most common things that I get told by students in terms of where they would like to become stronger is actually with Microsoft Excel. So, you know, in that capacity, that's a course, an optional course that the UQ library actually offers, along with many other different software packages. But that's an example of how you can access something. Now, Excel being part of the Office package, which we use pretty much, well, very frequently. I use it very frequently, and many people in different trades use it very frequently as well. It's absolutely essential. You don't have to become a master user, but a professional development course on Excel might teach you basic functions. It might teach you advanced functions. It could teach you something specific to your trade. If anybody is in accounting or finance, for example, I know nowadays there is specific software, but Excel is still really, really useful. Obviously, many people are using Excel as a database, and there's a lot of functions that it can do, especially when you're dealing with a lot of value, a lot of information on there, like big data, that sort of thing. So that's an example of a good technical professional development course. Now, I mentioned some other some less technical courses that I've done. So, for example, I have done a course on the team management, for example. That is not a technical skill, but it is a skill that is what I'd consider a professional competency or professional capability, e.g. something that is still going to be very, very valuable generally throughout my career, but it's not going to have, it wouldn't necessarily have a huge impact on how I did my job on a daily basis unless I was in that position. Whereas Excel is probably going to be of great importance to me regardless of the situation. So with that said, what I want to do is talk a bit about how you could start developing a personal or PD plan. Now, one of the first places to start is to do an audit of your current situation. Now, how you do an audit of your current situation is basically say, what am I really skilled at, or what would I like to be a bit more skilled at? Okay, so for many people that was going to be different things. Some people might want to use the Microsoft Excel example. Other people might want to get better at communicating or might want to become better public speakers. It doesn't particularly matter. And if you identify that area of development, you need to be saying to yourself, okay, well, how am I going to benefit from upskilling this? So one of the ways I became quite a confident public speaker was honestly just by doing it. I was put into a position on the first day of me working at my university in London back in 2014, and I'd never really spoken to a large volume of people before. And on my very first day, I was told, okay, so what you're going to be doing now is you're going to be escorting 30 to 40 school-aged children, so year 11 age, so, you know, about 15, 16 years old, doing a campus tour of a campus I didn't know anything about, doing a campus tour and talking them through different areas of the campus and the different, I suppose, the different functions that we had within the university. So, sure, I've done speaking gigs to, like, you know, a handful of people before, but when it came to 2014, I was thrust in front of 30 or 40 kids and had to, I suppose I just had to kind of just get on with it and deal with it. And, you know, ever since then, I've been doing an awful lot of presentations, workshops, and now I'm much more comfortable, and even did a presentation in front of 500 people at my last university, which was huge. That was for a prospective students' open day. So, you know, that had a lot of parents there as well. So that was a hugely important one. And, you know, to this day, I still do get nervous sometimes when I'm doing public speaking, like my workshops or presentations that I'm doing for UQ. But I'm so much more comfortable doing it than I was when I first started. And that, for me, I didn't particularly want to do a professional course or public speaking course regarding that, because honestly, you know, the expression practice makes perfect. I honestly just feel that in something that I'm doing every single day and I have to do regardless of whether or not I'm comfortable with it, pushing me out of my comfort zone will enable me to grow. Okay? One expression that I really, really like, and I don't want you to kind of take this the wrong way, is breakdown leads to breakthrough. Okay, and what that means is when you're facing adversity, what often that can lead to is actually times of strength, times of growth. So if there is anything that you're not particularly comfortable at doing, for example, yes, PD is going to be fantastic for you, and that might give you the confidence to be able to go and do the thing. Okay. One question we have got here from Rebecca. Rebecca wants to see how and if PD can help in my career choices moving forward. So, great question for anybody. If PD can help you in career choices going forward, I'm presuming you mean from the sense of, will doing PD help me decide what to do? I wouldn't like to kind of say yes or no there. And the honest reason for that is because I would always say you should be doing PD to upskill yourself for something you want to do or something you want to be strong at. With that said, let's say, for example, you decided that you wanted to, just for the fun of it, do a professional development course on how to effectively record and create videos using just your iPhone. You really, really enjoy it. And then you decide that you want to become, let's say, a vlogger or someone working in film production. Yes, in that case, it might be able to give you some kind of direction there. I would always try and encourage you to look at it from the perspective of, what do you want to be doing, and what that in terms of career, and then what can you be doing to give yourself the best chance of becoming the strongest candidate for that. Okay, so a lot of that obviously comes down to you understanding what is required in a particular industry, and then auditing the skills you've currently got against where you want to end up. Yun has asked if I've done whole lots of different development, for example, leadership, time management, office, etc. Should you include them in the resume, and would that be too much? The short answer there is it depends on if it's essential to that, to the jobs you're going for. Now, one thing I would also say is it depends on what kind of professional development it is. And whether that's, let's say, you know, a 5-10 minute video on YouTube talking you through things compared to an accredited course by a, you know, an employment trainer or a professional development organization, they're going to have much different weighting attached to it. For example, if it's a course that you have that's quite exclusive and you have to pay money for, and you come out of it with, you know, with, let's say, a certificate or something like that, then realistically, I probably would consider including that, especially if it's something to do with leadership and time management, which is obviously, they are key traits that are just expected of graduates by employers nowadays. Okay, now, with that said, even if, let's say, you've done something, something like edX. If you've done something like edX, I would consider including that, because edX isn't just something local. Obviously, it's quite broad, okay, and it can actually be quite well respected in industry. So I would include something like that, okay. It honestly depends on the context, though. So, what is the context of you doing that course? Is it just to say, hey, I've done this course? Okay, great. But is it going to have any relevance or any bearing on your ability to do a particular job? Okay, and if it is, then I would always give some context. So what kind of things did you learn and how did you implement that? Okay, so it really depends on the situation and what you want to get out of it. For something that's technical, technical professional development, so like your office, like something like R or Python or HTML or web development, or something that's tangible, meaning as a result of me doing this training, I'm now able to do this thing, and it's relevant to this employer because this is a job in marketing, web development, coding, whatever. I 100% would put that down on your CV and make a big deal about that, because what that is that's a particular set of skills that differentiates you from other people. Okay, so I work with a number of people, many of whom have a lot of different skills. And in the career service, we complement each other very nicely. So in terms of backgrounds and stuff, when it comes down to stuff like any marketing or stuff that we might need to do ad hoc, e.g. not through our marketing team, which is very infrequent, but even if it's just a case of discussing how we can communicate something. I have a background in marketing communications. I've also got a background in doing web development as well. So I would consider that to be, you know, my area of skill. So I would always talk about that and put that in my CV with the context. I'm also able to do blah, 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 which is relevant to you because insert reasons here. Okay. So I want you to kind of bear that in mind. In terms of how, back to Rebecca's question, in terms of how PD can help you in career choices moving forward, it can be as simple as you start doing a course and you really enjoy the content of it. So you want to decide, you know, you might decide that you want to give that a go. It might be that it identifies that you have a particular weakness, but if you address that weakness, or if you wanted to be upskilled in something, then it might help you identify, okay, so here's the kind of industry in which I'd be able to utilize this skill or be able to develop this even more. So I know that's super vague, Rebecca, because it's a very difficult question to answer there. And I don't really want to overload you with kind of, hey, you must do all the PD. Tao has asked how to develop a personal and PD plan. So fundamentally, audit. Okay, that's the best way to do that. So what kind of job do you want to be doing? Okay, that's question number one. And what skills are required? Now, when I'm saying doing an audit, what I mean by that is critically assess how competent you are at a particular skill. So I'd need to know the context there, but then it would be a case of identifying what skill you'd like to develop, and then any kind of training providers that is going to be suitable to you. So that might be, you know, depending on cost, it might be depending on time commitment. Obviously, being a student, you know, it's going to have an impact on your availability. It could be to do with the urgency as well. So certain professional development that you do might not be urgent whatsoever. Others might be considered a lot more urgent. So, for example, if you were going to be taking a leadership or management role within the next couple of weeks, I would say that leadership training or leadership professional development courses are going to be super, super useful, okay, in terms of in terms of doing it as soon as possible, because it's going to help you in that role. But one thing I will say, guys, is that regardless of the amount of professional and development that you do, doesn't necessarily mean you are going to be able to flourish immediately in that role, because off-the-job training and on-the-job training are two very different things. For example, if you work in retail or hospitality, you might have been trained on how to use the till system and, on a dry run with no customers. But when you have, hundreds of customers queuing up and people getting frustrated, and you're working on a till system and we're getting a bit more flustered, that's obviously going to teach you how to use a certain skill or use a certain thing in a much different way to just kind of doing it in a classroom. It's the whole theory versus practice again. Okay, so if it comes to when I did my driving test, obviously there's theory and then there's practical. You can learn the theory side of things as much as possible, but if you're not implementing it, then what I'd say is that you're probably not going to be able to apply those skills. So not that it's a waste of time, it's more a case of, okay, you're probably not getting the most value out of it as possible. Okay. Do you think it's more important to upskill yourself, the content you like to do, or build up skill for career, but the skill is not in your interest? Great question. It depends on what the trade-off is. So if you like to do stuff, fantastic. Because it depends on what it is. So let's use the video editing as an example. If you love filming, shooting video and editing video, for example, and you absolutely love doing that, but it's not necessarily going to be take a huge part in your career, great, you'll enjoy it, so you'll be committed to it. And if you're committed to it, obviously you'll work hard, and if you work hard, you'll enjoy it more because you'll get good results. That's just a cycle that's going to continue. Now, if it was something like a time management course that you need or time management development that you need to help you in your career, but you don't particularly want to, it's boring and you're not particularly too interested in that, then I think there is a trade-off there in, honestly, will it help you perform better? And if you do perform better, will you enjoy it more? The answer tends to be yes there. Now, if you are upskilling yourself in something that is not part of your role, doesn't necessarily mean that it will never be part of your role. Okay? Theoretically, a position might open up at your current employer or your next employer, whereby it requires a skill such as video editing or marketing or design, and the creative industries. And because you have done something, you might be able to differentiate yourself from a different kind of cohort of applications. Similarly, what can often happen is that, as has happened to me in my career, me saying, oh, I'm actually, I used to do a web development business, I used to do web design, has meant that at times I've taken on additional responsibilities of setting up different platforms my previous university in London had purchased, doing a bit of, it was very basic HTML stuff that I had to do to get that set up because it was a content management system. But still, that's something that realistically we could have brought project managers in for or outsource altogether. But we were able to do it in-house, We were able to do it in-house, as in I was able to do that on the side. And the benefit of that is that because it was a platform purely for the employability centre at that university, meant that we were able to control exactly what content we were putting on there, and just the look of it to keep it in line with the branding that we had at the time. That has helped me in terms of when I first moved to Brisbane and started a role working in marketing communications, because I have got a background in doing that. My degree was in marketing. I'm quite experienced with communication strategies and understanding user experience and how that all is impacted upon by the messaging. Okay, so that helped me transition into my role in marketing and communications, and that's still something that I now occasionally do, but it's not part of my role. It really depends. So if you look at from like a professional development point of view, like Managing conflict is an example of a course that it runs in, across many different industries. I think UQ offers a course on how to manage conflict, or how to, manage stress, something like that, that might not be particularly in your interest. Like, you might have no interest in even coming into conflict at all, but there will be people in your career who you have disagreements with, whether that's the, colleagues or external stakeholders or internal stakeholders, whether that's even, disagreeing with members of family outside of the work situation in a personal space. Conflict is something that no one's interested in the sense that nobody just wants to go out there and have conflict with people. But being able to manage and prevent conflict is actually, I'd say, a core skill and value of most people, that most people could value from doing. Similarly with, if you ever did like a dealing with difficult behavior, that's applicable if you work in retail. It's difficult if it's worth implementing if you're a parent. It's something that you might have to come up against if you work at UQ, or if you're a student, or if you are in a customer facing or person facing environment. Okay. So in terms of dealing with difficult behavior, like me working in a student-facing capacity, when I did the Dealing with Difficult Behaviour course, I believe in 2015, that completely revolutionised the way in which I kind of interacted with people. Not that I was doing it incorrectly before, but what it did is it expanded my horizons on how best to look out for the triggers, or to react effectively, and how to de-escalate. Okay, so since then, one of the things I pride myself on since doing that course is my composure when I'm working with students, or with employers, or with with academics, or anybody. Okay, one of the things I took away from that, which is absolutely core to my beliefs and my values right now, is that you never know what's happening in somebody else's life. Okay, to make them be acting difficultly. Okay, and that's something that I am, as a parent to a 2.5-year-old, like, if anyone out there has is either a parent or has got younger siblings, everyone remembers the toddler years. Okay, and if you don't, then it's difficult. Now, the thing with the toddler years, and being the terrible twos, or three-nagers, what they call 3-year-olds, is that children find it difficult to communicate. Okay, and I'm not an expert. This is just me talking as a parent myself. So my son, as I say, he's nearly 2.5 years old, and he struggles to communicate what is causing him pain or any difficulties. Okay, so how that is difficult for parents is because, if, let's say, for example, I was being difficult with my parents, obviously as a 30-year-old now, I would say, oh, Mum, Dad, I'm very, very sorry. I'm just, I'm very tired and irritable because my son kept me up all night, or I've had a stressful day, or I'm going through some thing at the moment, okay, some circumstance. We're able to explain that, and people might say, okay, right, and then adapt their communication and delivery style as a result of them knowing how to deal with that situation. Okay, now, obviously children can't do that, so a lot of it's guesswork, and to be honest with you, it's something whereby you don't necessarily know if it's going to be the correct outcome, and you just have to accept that. You have to accept that you're just troubleshooting one thing at a time. Okay, it really depends on the circumstance. Obviously, I'm not here to give you a parenting lecture or anything like that. So I want you to keep that in mind. Now, let me share something with you in terms of my professional development, or my personal development, sorry, that has really helped me over the years. And that, believe it or not, is reading. Okay, reading is something I enjoy doing as a hobby, and I like reading self-help books or professional development books. I really, really do. It's my favorite kind of book. I prefer it to fiction. And I feel I just get a lot of value from it. Okay, so one of the key things that's helped me in terms of books, consider this kind of Jamie's book club. One of my I think the most valuable book I've read is this one, Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep. Okay, now I wouldn't say I had problems sleeping. I bought it on a recommendation. I'm somebody that I'm very physically active. I go to the gym quite a lot, and now I've obviously got a toddler. So sleep is something that is massively important to all of us. And I learned so much about sleep from this book, and it's completely changed the way I sleep, okay, in my personal development. So, for example, setting the room temperature so that it's cool, okay? And doing that about an hour before bedtime, creating a good sleep hygiene. Okay, and I won't go into it because, to be honest with you, it's not massively interesting, but it helps. You know, sleep hygiene in terms of air temperature, room temperature, about making sure that, you know, reducing blue light. So, like, for example, you know, phone screen, laptops and stuff before bedtime because of the stimulation. Even stuff like, you know, if you're tired during the day, listen to your body. Try having a nap for 5 minutes. You know, 5 minutes. If you're not able to nap, great. Get up. If you drop off, brilliant. And listen to your body that way. So that's one thing that's been really, really helpful to me that I read in the last year. When I was younger, I had a bit of a temper problem, and I would occasionally not be able, I didn't really understand what was causing it, and I would just kind of be quite volatile. And this is going back many, many years. And one of the books that has massively helped me there, this book, The Chimp Paradox, okay, by a guy called Professor Stephen Peters. Now, The Chimp Paradox, fantastic book. That's all about mind management. So programming for confidence, success, and happiness. And the premise to that book is basically helping you understand why we react in certain ways. Okay. And again, that's super essential for me because, and it's something I'm actually going to reread. And that's just because I enjoy reading it so much. I read it about 5 years ago. Okay. So that's another great book for my personal development. And the final book that I want to showcase to you guys is probably one that one of the most amazing listens. I listened to it on audiobook actually. And this is my wife's copy. This is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And the point of this book is all about how tiny changes can lead to remarkable results. So it's about making things accessible, because oftentimes we can either fall into bad habits, or we don't have habits, or don't have routine. And in today's ever-changing world and, you know, environment, it's something that we need to have habits in order to kind of keep ourselves, I suppose, in tune. So actually, now I'm talking, I'd say that these two books, Chimp Paradox and Atomic Habits, actually, when I say go hand in hand, what I mean by that is that there'll be takeaways from both, and that they both really, really helped me in the last I don't know, 5-10 years or so. So from that perspective, I mean, that's kind of some of the personal development I'm doing on the side. Alongside that, there's other types of professional development or personal development you could do. Could even be stuff like internships. It could be freelance work. It could be volunteering. Anything that is going to move you slightly closer to the goal and move the needle along of you being a full, well-rounded candidate. Identifying what is required is quite often the most difficult thing. Say, oh, I don't really know what to do. Or there might be a few different areas that you want to upskill on, and for several different reasons, you might not actually be able to identify which one to do. It could be time, it could be money. Now, one of the ways to combat this is by just having a look at, let's say, the catalogues of certain platforms. So I'm presuming many of you know, obviously will know about LinkedIn, and specifically about LinkedIn Learning, okay? So LinkedIn Learning used to be lynda.com, and that is basically a website filled with courses. Now, the best thing about that is that UQ actually has a license for LinkedIn Learning, meaning you can access LinkedIn Learning by using your UQ credentials, much like you logged into Zoom. And so if any of you are wondering about how to access this kind of stuff, then that's a good example of somewhere that you could do. So let me just briefly share my screen with you so I can show you how to use it. So give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, so LinkedIn Learning, this is what it looks like, and there's a whole range of things on there. So top picks based on my skill set, okay? Learning paths to help you succeed during times of change. So that's super valuable to COVID-19, coronavirus, and I'm going to talk about that specifically in a little bit. So LinkedIn Learning is a fantastic place whereby you are able to kind of just upskill yourself. So let's say, for example, you want to learn how to, let's say you want to learn a bit more about marketing. If you go to browse, you go in business, you'll see there's different things here. There's subjects about marketing, okay? And within that, you have stuff like pathways as well, learning paths. So it might be that you wanted to learn about how to do foundations of content marketing, or you want something like social media marketing for small businesses. So there's a whole range of different kind of things available. It might be that you want to do something completely different altogether, like you want to learn about leadership and management. Okay, let's have a look at this. If you go on to, let's say, learning paths on that filter, what you can see is, you know, advance your skills as a manager. Applying lean and agile to your IT organization, which falls under project management and product manager. It might be digital transformation for leaders. Okay, so what you can see on here, there's a whole range of different things. Now, Yun, any recommendations for these courses? To be totally honest with you, what I would recommend you doing is going to the learning homepage, and I think there is an option to see, to look at the top picks and see what's trending and see what's popular. Now, identifying a good development course that you might want to do is obviously, as I say, it might not necessarily be the easiest thing, because some of these courses you can see are, you know, maybe 5 hours long, 4 hours, you know, for Photoshop basic training, the essentials, whereas you've got content marketing foundations in 53 minutes. This is something that you can chip away at. And a lot of people are saying during COVID-19, that this is the time that you should be, you know, focusing on upskilling yourself. But it's a time to do that, yes, but ultimately for some of us, our motive is purely to get through this period of lockdown and come out the other side, or just adapt to what is considered to be, I don't like saying the new normal, but it's to what the current situation is. Okay, so for example, I have worked from home previously in previous roles before, when I've had big projects or big things or needed to have an admin day, okay? But since I've worked at UQ for the last 2.5 years, honestly, it was a case of, you know, showing up to work every day, doing the work, and the only days I wouldn't be in is if I had holiday or if I was sick. And those are the only times I'd be at home, or if I had something to be at home for, like, I don't know, a plumber, or, you know, something going on at the house. Now, obviously, when it was announced that learning would be taken online as a way to try and stop the spread of the virus, and we were all working from home, it was pretty much click of the fingers, hey, you're all working from home now. There was a bit of lead up so that we were all ready to work from home should we need, but then literally, you know, I left work on a Wednesday. I didn't come in on the Thursday because I needed to look after my son, and got a call on the Wednesday night knowing I wasn't going to be in, saying we're working from home now. And so on the Friday from then on, that was like mid-March, that was nearly 2 months ago, it was, right, you're working from home. And it's like working in a new company or starting a new job in some capacity, because it's a bit of a culture shock, because it's like you have all this freedom and it's a new way of working. And the thing is, what you don't have by stuff like working from home is stuff like, you know, social interactions, like face-to-face meetings, obviously because of the restrictions. But one of the things that a lot of people have been signposted to is like a, you know, how to work from home professional development course, or like a LinkedIn Learning kind of course, which doesn't require a huge time commitment. And honestly, fundamentally, the work that I'm doing is the same as I've always done. The difference is just the way I'm delivering it is different. Okay, so everything's on Zoom rather than face to face. Fine. I didn't particularly need to do any courses on that because I already knew how Zoom worked. I already, I've been doing careers advice or some iteration of careers or recruitment advice for the best part of 7 years now. So it was something that, I didn't particularly need to do an upskill on, but other people may have needed to, okay? People that have never used Zoom before, and then suddenly everyone's talking about Zoom. That's an example of a professional development course, like learning the ins and outs of Zoom. And Zoom's got a great walkthrough. UQ has a great Zoom user guide as well. That's not really professional development so much as just having a look through to make sure that you're in a good position. Now, with all this said about COVID-19, imagine if you're having an interview with an employer in a few months' time and they ask you the question, so what did you do during lockdown? If you said, oh, I did my degree. Okay, great, but so did everyone else. If you're able to say, oh, what I actually did was I spent some time going into learning the fundamentals of, time management, or I did a professional development course about career development during this time, then that's something where the employer is going to think, okay, you did something fantastic, something that differentiates you from other people. If you haven't done any PD during lockdown, that's okay. Okay, everyone's at different stages and has different visions, different goals for, basically just for lockdown and then for beyond. Okay. In terms of recommendations for courses, I'd say start with something that's either going to help you with your career or something that you have the time to do on the side. Could be photography, could be bird watching, it could be it could be about blockchain. It could be about literally anything. Some of those things might help you move forward with your career. But if you're in a job and you aren't sure of a good topic to do, like one of the conversations I frequently have with my manager is, well, and I have had these conversations with many managers actually, is do you think there is any professional development that I should do in order to help me achieve what we're trying to achieve? Now, that depends on what the goal is. So I've had stuff on kind of, as I said, stress management. That was a fantastic one I went on. So it's about identifying, that was all about, identifying when we're getting stressed. And I do consider that professional development because that has helped me develop professionally. So when I'm starting to get stressed now, I remember the fundamentals of that course and what it taught me and the ways of de-stressing basically. Okay. Similarly, when it comes to like a course I'm currently doing on the side, which is just something on YouTube, so completely free. That's something that I had, that's just about web development. That's about, using WordPress's advanced features, something. I'm doing that because if someone ever said to me, hey, we're looking at revamping our web page, I'm able to say, actually, I've recently done a course on WordPress. I'd be happy to show you what I'm able to do. Now, none of that's mandatory for me, whereas you might be told, okay, we need you to pass a Prince 2 project management course in order to get this, to be considered for promotion. Or what can often happen in certain industries is you're told that you need to log a certain amount of hours of professional development. Okay, and that really, that's basically to demonstrate competencies. Okay, so again, that shows just how important things, how important it can be. If you're applying for a job, what can often happen as well is that you could have a look at, as I've said earlier, you have a look at what kind of skills or requirements they have from candidates. So if it's like, basic understanding of Excel, I know I've mentioned Excel a few times, you might decide to do, a basic Excel course or something like that. Now, honestly, in terms of where to access professional development or where to find good courses, associations, industry bodies, those kind of things might have courses themselves, and they can often be quite costly. But if you get accreditation from that, that's huge. Okay. it comes down to accreditation versus reputation, I suppose, because if normally those two go hand in hand, but something like LinkedIn Learning, which is very reputable, but it's accessible by everybody that has a learning account. So that's most people in education settings, okay? So how would you differentiate me and a fellow careers advisor if we both done the exact same PD? A lot of that might come down to personality or might come down to a cultural fit to the organization. So you can see there automatically that's not necessarily going to have too big an impact. Whereas if one of us had done something with an industry body or got accreditation, that might actually be more appealing to an employer because it's a recognized body and they know what it's taught. Okay? So you've got to think about that. Now, as I've said, it might be that you don't want to do something professional, but you want to work on your mindset or you want to work on relaxation techniques, something that's more personal, that's going to help you perform in your day job, okay? I'm personally a huge advocate of reading. I'm also a huge advocate of LinkedIn Learning and stuff like Udemy as well. I'll put that in a chat box. Udemy is paid courses, but they often run some brilliant courses for fantastic discounts. So, courses worth a few $100s that, you can actually get for about 12 or 15 if you either have the coupon code or you come on at a decent time when they're running their promotions. Okay. Now, there's a lot of stuff on there. It depends what you're wanting to develop in, which is the most important thing. But I would always, guys, recommend you understand how the professional development is going to move you forward. So, or how it's going to impact you. So let's look at planning PD. So what I want you to do is I want you to either type it, you don't have to use a chat box, just type it on on Notepad or physically write it, whatever, however you want to do this, and just say, what do I want to be better at? Okay, now I'm going to keep it super vague. It might be that you want to get better at swimming. That was one of my goals when I was still living in London. I was like, I really want to get better at swimming because me being from the UK, yes, we have indoor swimming pools, but it's not really something I ever had much exposure to. Like I know I can swim. I'm not very good at it, but I set myself a goal of I want to be able to swim this length in this time domain. Now, I obviously didn't move to Australia purely to become a better swimmer. I moved to Australia for family reasons because it was the next stage. I actually consider this to be the next stage in my professional development in terms of moving across the country, and I was fortunate that I was able to secure a role at UQ, which was always my top target of employer to work for once I'd arrived in Brisbane. But one of the best things about that is obviously the fact that when I was on lunch break or when I wasn't working or before work or after work, I was able just to go down to the aquatic centre and do some swimming. And obviously the weather being absolutely glorious here, even at the moment it's a bit overcast, but normally it's absolutely beautiful in Brisbane most of the time, means that you're not so aggrieved about having to go swimming. I've set myself that goal. It's by doing it, okay? I could have got lessons. I chose not to. I just did it. That was kind of learning by doing. Now, similarly, I have attended conferences, exhibitions, stuff like how to grow small businesses. I've been to a number of things by different stakeholders at UQ as well. And that's all stuff where you've got all the theory and then you just need to implement it. So that's all stuff I wanted to get better at, okay? And one of the things I want to still get better at is still stress management or forming good habits, okay? So, which is why I'm doing this reading on the side. I could go to courses as well, and I probably will at some point, but right now, this is ample for me in being able to create a, in terms of creating a professional development plan. So once you've written down what you want to be better at, the next stage there is this to help me in my career, or is this because I am interested in the topic, or it might be both. If it's both, fantastic. Maybe say to help you in your career. If it's purely a case, if I had a magic wand, I would do this because I don't need to do it professionally. Put it down, okay? Because it's still something that you can put on your resume at the end of the day if it's going to be relevant to getting you that particular job. Okay, so I just want to stress that it's if it's relevant to a particular job, put it on your resume. Okay, so that's really all the discussion points that I had. Does anyone have any questions at all? I'll give you a few minutes just to respond to those. Evelyn, where to start? Okay, so what do you mean? Do you mean in terms of making a plan, or do you mean in terms of physically where would you look at PD courses? Okay, so with everything. So the first thing first is look at what you want to be doing as a career. Okay, if no, let me rewind. The first thing you need to be doing is identifying, are you looking at doing personal and professional development to help you in your career, specifically within your career, or as a hobby? Okay, which is kind of what I said a few minutes ago. So that will dictate the rest of it. If you're not sure where to start with making a professional development plan, then simply the short answer there is to assess where you want to upskill with. Okay, once you know what to upskill with, that's going to help you understand the kind of different providers. Once you know the providers, whether that's an online course, whether that's going to be face-to-face when lockdown is lifted, that's completely up to you. That depends on stuff like money, depends on time commitments, depends on the training provider. There's no right or wrong answer with that. Once you have identified that kind of method, start doing it. Once you've started doing it, then the simple answer there is to be quite honest with you, put it into practice as much as possible. If you, this is a conversation I'm super keen to help you with in terms of, if you're confused about or you're not sure where to start with a particular kind of topic, have a chat with me offline. You've got my email address. Let's have a much more in-depth conversation about this and look at identifying professional development courses specific to you. Might be interesting. Okay. The way I identify where to start is honestly by saying, what do I wish I was better at? Okay. And then from there, it's, will it help me with my career? Yes or no. Most of the time, regardless of what it is, the answer is going to be yes. And then from that, I basically make a decision on how much time do I have, how much time am I able to commit moving forward. No problem. Does anyone have any final questions? Okay, so that marks the end of Fireside 5, guys. Next week we are doing personal branding, which is another exciting topic, something else I'm super passionate about. So I hope that was helpful. Now, as always, you've all got my email address, so you can send me any follow-up questions or book appointments with me through Student Hub. The recording will get sent out to you as soon as we're able to dispense that. If you have any questions in the meantime, just flick me an email and we'll go from there. So, yeah, thank you all for coming and enjoy the rest of your week.